December 24th, 2019. 9 p.m. Families across South London settle in for the night, wrapping gifts, lighting candles, and winding down for Christmas morning. As Flamur Beqiri walks towards his front door with his wife and young child, a figure emerges from the shadows. Dressed like a council street cleaner, wearing a latex mask and high-vis jacket, the man raises a gun and fires 10 times. 8 bullets tear into Beqiri's back as his family watches in horror. This was no robbery, no random act. This was an organized international assassination, executed with military-like precision by a man who flew to London under the guise of a tourist. But the killer made one mistake, and that mistake would unravel the entire plot. This is the story of a Gangland feud that spanned Europe, a professional hit carried out on British soil, and the surveillance trail that brought down the assassin. The murder of Flamur Beqiri wasn't just a personal attack. It was a message from the criminal underworld, and a chilling reminder that even on the quietest of nights, London is never far from organized crime. To the outside world, Flamur Beqiri was a family man, a successful music executive, a devoted husband, loving brother to reality TV star Flamur Beqiri, known from The Real Housewives of Cheshire, and a father of 2. From his £1.5 million townhouse in Battersea, life looked polished, professional, enviable. But behind the luxury cars and Instagram smiles was a man deeply entrenched in Europe's criminal underworld. Born in Albania and raised in Sweden, Beqiri had long been on the radar of law enforcement across Scandinavia. Though he publicly fronted as a record producer, authorities suspected he played a central role in organized drug trafficking, weapons smuggling, and money laundering. In 2018, Swedish police named him as one of the country's most wanted men. He was linked to a smuggling ring responsible for moving millions of pounds worth of illicit goods into Northern Europe, including Class A, drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. Though some charges were later dropped, he was still convicted of illegally handling smuggled goods and received a suspended sentence. But it was his connections that made him a marked man. Beqiri was closely associated with Daniel Petrovski, leader of a powerful Albanian-Swedish crime group. His inner circle also included Naif Adawi, a convicted armed robber linked to one of Sweden's biggest heists, a £7 million raid on a security firm in 2010. The pair were high-ranking figures in a network that rivaled another emerging force, a Danish-based criminal organization run by Flamur Beqiri. The rivalry between Petrovski and Beqiri's networks wasn't just professional, it was bloody. In 2019, Adawi's partner Caroline Hakim was gunned down in Malmö while holding their infant child. That hit sent shockwaves through the criminal world. The message was clear: no one is untouchable. And just months later, Flamur Beqiri became the next name on the list. The feud between rival criminal factions was no longer just about power. It had become personal. After the murder of Naif Adawi's partner in Malmö, the Petrovski network knew retaliation was coming. And Flamur Beqiri, with his close ties to both Adawi and Petrovski, was now in the crosshairs of a violent European gang war. The man chosen to carry out the hit was an unlikely suspect. Anis Hemesi, a 24-year-old professional kickboxer from Sweden, had no criminal record, clean background, no surveillance history, no red flags. On paper, he looked like an ordinary tourist. But behind the scenes, he had been carefully recruited to carry out one of the most high-profile assassinations on UK soil in recent years. Hemesi flew into London under the radar, his entry timed and masked by the festive chaos of Christmas travel. He brought with him a latex mask, high-visibility clothing, boots, a black beanie, and a litter picker, the disguise of a humble street cleaner. He blended into the city, preparing for days. Over several nights, he carried out meticulous surveillance on Beqiri's home in Battersea. CCTV would later show him patrolling the area, disguised, face obscured. A local even stopped him, questioning why he was sweeping both a private estate and a council road. Hemsey walked away, undeterred. He had a job to do. But Hemsey wasn't acting alone. From Sweden, Tobias Andersson and Bauer Karaja were allegedly coordinating logistics. On the ground in London, he was supported by Clifford Rollox and Claude Isaac, who helped him access gear, cover his tracks, and navigate the area. The safe house was arranged by Esteban Pino Munizaga, who rented a flat in Oyster Wharf, just a short distance from the target's home. Together, this network of accomplices pieced together a professional, coordinated hit. The plan was clear: execute the target on Christmas Eve, vanish into the night, and disappear across the continent before the city even woke. But the streets of London are filled with eyes, and one mistake was about to bring the whole operation crashing down. December 24th, 2019. At approximately 9 p.m., Flamur Beqiri returned home with his wife, Missa, and their young child. The family had just spent the evening celebrating Christmas, completely unaware that a killer was lying in wait outside their front door. As they approached the entrance of their home on Battersea Church Road, the figure emerged. Dressed in a high-visibility vest, gloves, and a latex mask, Anis Hemsey moved with lethal intent. Without a word, he raised a gun and opened fire. 10 rounds were discharged. 8 struck Flamur in the back. He collapsed on the pavement, fatally wounded. His wife screamed and their young child stood frozen in shock. The scene was devastating, not just for the family, but for the quiet, affluent neighborhood that had never witnessed such targeted, cold-blooded violence. Hemsey didn't hesitate. His escape plan had already been rehearsed. He fled on a bicycle, chosen deliberately to blend in with London traffic, but uncommon enough to later stand out to investigators. He disappeared into the night, headed for a flat nearby, stripped off his disguise, and prepared to vanish. By the early hours of Christmas Day, Hemsey had boarded a flight from Heathrow to Copenhagen. He traveled under his own name, quietly slipping out of the country before police could even process the horror left behind. For hours, the murder of Flamur Beqiri was a mystery. A team of detectives was already beginning to follow a trail of surveillance footage, eyewitnesses, and forensic clues that would reveal one of the most elaborate assassinations ever carried out in modern London. Within hours of the shooting, the Metropolitan Police launched a major investigation. Detectives quickly ruled out robbery. This was a calculated execution. Their first major lead came from the city itself. London is one of the most heavily surveilled places in the world. It was through this vast web of CCTV footage that police began to piece together the killer's movements. Days before the shooting, a man had been spotted patrolling the area around Flamur Beqiri's home. He was dressed as a street cleaner, wearing a latex mask, sunglasses, gloves, and a high-visibility jacket. Detectives followed the suspect's escape route via CCTV, on foot at first, then on a distinctive green lady's bicycle. The trail led them to Oyster Wharf, a riverside flat just a short distance from the crime scene. It had been rented by Esteban Pino Munizaga, a Swedish national with no prior convictions. But once inside, forensic investigators found the apartment to be a treasure trove of evidence. Gunshot residue was found on the bicycle believed to have been used in the escape. The high-visibility jacket, black bin bags, and litter picker, part of Hemsey's street cleaner disguise, were recovered from inside. DNA from food wrappers, drink bottles, and other household items matched Hemsey. But the most damning piece of evidence was a ripped boarding pass, discarded in a bin. Part of Hemsey's name was still visible, the final link in the chain that tied him directly to the crime. Detectives also analyzed mobile phone usage through advanced cell tower techniques, revealing that Hemsey used significantly more data when inside the flat, and much less when outside. A digital fingerprint that aligned perfectly with the timeline of surveillance and the hit itself. Working in coordination with Swedish and Danish authorities, police confirmed that Hemesi had flown into London days before the attack under the guise of a tourist. By the early hours of Christmas Day, he had boarded a flight to Copenhagen using his real name. After a trip to Thailand, he returned to Sweden, where he was arrested and later extradited to the UK. As the investigation widened, police uncovered a broader conspiracy. Estevan Munizaga had rented the flat and was aware of the planned murder. Clifford Rolox and Claude Isaac, both based in London, were found to have assisted Hemesi with equipment and helped cover his tracks. Meanwhile, Tobias Andersson and Bauer Karaja were believed to have coordinated logistics from Sweden. The operation had been deliberate, layered, and well-financed. But in the end, it couldn't outpace London's surveillance network. The fake street cleaner had done his job. But in a city like London, the real cleaners, the forensic teams and detectives, would sweep up the truth. By early 2022, after a meticulous 2-year investigation spanning multiple countries, the case was ready for trial. The courtroom became the final stage in a cross-border crime story that had begun with a brutal murder on a London doorstep. At its center stood Anis Hemesi, no longer just a clean-cut athlete, but now the accused, a hired hitman in an organized gang war. The prosecution presented a devastating wall of evidence. CCTV footage placed Hemesi in the vicinity of the murder site in the days leading up to the killing, wearing his now infamous disguise. Forensic scientists connected his DNA to items inside the Oyster Wharf flat, from food packaging to drink containers. Traces of gunpowder were found on the unique bicycle he used to escape. And in the bin, police found a ripped-up plane ticket with part of his name still visible. Even Hemesi's digital footprint told a story. Mobile data showed he was active inside the flat, but virtually silent outside, matching the movements of someone carefully planning and executing a murder. Witness testimony further cemented his identity, including accounts from residents who had confronted the suspicious cleaner before the attack. The prosecution argued that Hemesi had been recruited by a criminal syndicate connected to Danish gang leader Amir Mekki. This was not a crime of passion, they said. It was a business move in a ruthless turf war. Hemesi was the triggerman, flown in to settle a score with the Petrovsky gang. The defense admitted Hemesi's involvement, but portrayed him as a pawn, a man drawn into a world far bigger than himself. They emphasized his lack of prior convictions, his quiet background in sports, and suggested he had been manipulated by more powerful figures behind the scenes. But the jury was not persuaded. In February 2022, Anis Hemesi was found guilty of the murder of Flamur Beqiri. The judge called it an organized, cold-blooded execution and sentenced him to life in prison, with a minimum term of 35 years before he would be eligible for parole. Others involved in the conspiracy also faced justice. Estevan Pino Munizaga, who had rented the safe house and knew of the plot, received a 15-year sentence. He must serve at least 2/3 before possible release. Clifford Rolox and Claude Isaac, both of whom assisted Hemesi in London, were handed 3-year sentences each, with minimum terms of 1.5 years. However, Tobias Andersson and Bauer Karaja, who were accused of coordinating the hit from Sweden, were acquitted of all charges. If this case shocked you, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, was justice served? Or is the real mastermind still out there? Stay with us for more real UK crime stories, where every detail matters.